Hello, everyone. We're back with the Candidates Podcast. I'm here with my fellow candidates. And what are we talking about today, guys? It's discipline. This is the discipline in school, which I don't know. I think this might, I think Val said it off camera, I think this might be the best topic that we're going to cover in this series. Do you want to kick it off? Do you want somebody else to kick it off? Go for it.
Kick it off.
Do your thing.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing with discipline is just getting back to making sure that teachers have the support from the administration, other staff to be able to handle discipline issues so they can get back to more instruction time. And I think this also flows over to the problem we're having with teacher shortages. If teachers don't feel like they're supported, they're more likely to leave. I was a teacher, and I can tell you from personal experience that I didn't leave that job because I wasn't getting paid well enough. I actually, for a beginning teacher, was paid really well in the district I worked in. And I got a really nice raise the second year too, but that didn't keep me there because we had a discipline issue in that school, and we weren't supported. There was no help to deal with the discipline issues. They literally had a flag that they would hang up in the school any day that we got through a whole day, and this was elementary, by the way. We got through a whole day without any discipline issues. I think my first year it was up like 1 or 2 days.
Jeez.
The entire year. So that's why I left, because I wasn't supported as a teacher to handle that, and I felt like I could not teach what I was there to teach, and eventually I burned out, and that's why I left.
Well, I mean, that's the story we keep hearing from both current teachers and ex-teachers, though, right? It's because I was just talking last week to a gentleman. He retired last year. I think he retired last year, and he said I stopped enforcing discipline. He goes, I just stopped. He goes, I didn't care what the policy was because I knew that if I sent a kid down to the office, I was just going to get in trouble for it. So he gave me specific examples too. He's like, one time I sent a young woman down who was wearing an inappropriate shirt, sent her down for a dress code violation, and she got sent right back, and the vice principal, gave him an earful saying, knock it off, keep her in class. What's wrong with you? He said, another time I sent a kid down for being unruly and swearing in class and everything, and next thing you know, I'm on a phone call with the parents being forced to apologize because I yelled at their kid. And he's like, I didn't yell at their kid, but I did tell him to get out of my class. But he said I had no autonomy. I had no backup from the administration. I couldn't run my own classroom. I had no control. He said I stuck around a few years longer than I would have at any other job because I wanted to get my pension. But as soon as I qualified, I quit. He's like, 'cause I don't need this. And that's terrible. That's terrible and there's no reason for that. I mean, that's a culture issue. That has nothing to do with anything other than culture. And I don't care. People hate this stuff, but culture always flows downhill, always. Which in this type of situation, the board influences the administration. If the administration does not think the board is going to back them up, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to put their rear out there in the wind to possibly lose their job to the board. And then the administration has to back up the teachers. And if the teachers they're the ones that ultimately have to enforce discipline. And if they refuse because they've got no backup, it'll never get enforced. And you'll end up with chaos, which I think we're seeing, maybe not across the board, but definitely in pockets.
So what's the solution, right? So accountability. The community needs to hold the board accountable. The board needs to hold the administration accountable. The administration needs to empower the teachers to be accountable and teach accountability for kids. That is what discipline is. So if we're lacking discipline, we're creating a whole generation of kids who are going to be unaccountable adults, which is going to make this problem continue to grow.
And you're not doing the kids any favors, because once they get into the real world, your boss isn't going to care that you got away with that stuff in school. Like, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
And you're gonna feel victimized, and you're not even going to understand why, because you never learned that your behavior was inappropriate.
And your mom can't call in and yell at your boss.
I had that happen once in my company. I got a call from my mom. He did not stay after that. I was like, I can't have your mom calling me. That's not how these things work. But yeah.
Look, when we were growing up, we were held accountable for our choices. If you went to school in inappropriate clothes, you were sent home, or you were sent to the nurses and had to wear the smelly sweatpants or whatever, you know?
Yep.
If you didn't behave on the bus, you now became a walker, and it didn't matter if it was 6 miles to your house. That's the way it was. Kids were held accountable. They are not being held accountable anymore. And that's a problem. And it's really a problem from the standpoint of we have completely taken the power away from the teachers to control their classrooms. So how can a teacher who, our teachers are very passionate about learning. They're very passionate about teaching and providing the best possible education for these kids. How can they do that if they're not empowered to control their classroom? If they have discipline issues in the classroom and we've just got to wait for the next 20 minutes while somebody figures out their meltdown for the moment, all 25 other kids in that class are losing out, and that teacher is losing the opportunity to educate. We have to have a better system in place to handle those situations so that kids are not being disrupted, so teachers can teach and we're not burning them out. I mean, imagine going to work every day and having somebody screaming and yelling at you and refusing to do their work, and imagine going and having an employee do that.
Oh, I'd never make it.
Right? There would be a system, right?
Oh, yeah.
To remove them from that situation. Otherwise, you'd have complete anarchy in your office, right? All your employees would be like, I'm going to take a 2-hour lunch. I'm going to, this and that and everything else. We've got to empower. We've got to give the power back to the teachers to enforce their discipline, to enforce the codes, the rules that are already put in place. We need the administration to back them. We need the board to back them. And that's, if I'm elected, that's what my plan is. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, you hit on a good point there. The intangible of when you have disruptions in the classroom, what that's doing to all of the other students.
Yeah.
Maybe they're fired up to learn. They came to school ready, and now they're having to be in an environment that they may not even feel safe in, right? Where they don't feel like they can focus on their work. And like you said, again, that's just one more contributor to teacher burnout, is having to have a classroom. And so I think shorter term is that supporting the teachers, the administration supporting the teachers, the board. I totally agree. I think longer term solution is building a culture of respect. And that mutual respect between students and teachers, the community, the students and their facilities, right? There were some issues with students defacing bathrooms and things. I mean, just having that pride in your school, pride in your community, and building that community of respect. It's a longer term vision, right? But you have to get that ball rolling, and I think that'll pay off down the road.
And I think we're starting to see some of that. Like I just saw that the football team went out and encouraged the golf team before they went off to their big golf. Is that a game, a match? I don't know.
I go with that.
Sweet Lord of mercy. Unbelievable.
But that's
I don't know.
cool.
I don't even watch soccer. I don't know.
But that's really cool. Like, and I applaud those who encourage that, because I think that's the kind of things that we need to do more of in order to instill that, camaraderie with kids and that pride in school and
it's there, right? We see these events where they do a community cleanup, a campus cleanup, and so it absolutely is there. I mean, we have a strong school spirit, and if you talk to Dr. Trickett, right, so many people move back into the district that went to Wilson or nearby schools in Berks County, and there's a reason they want to come here. And I think all of us want to keep that vision alive. If we want people continuously keeping Wilson as that premier district to come to, and that's why we're all doing this. We're concerned that that's not going to be the case.
Well, and I think you guys just called out, though, there's a pretty big separation there between how we treat the student athletes and how we treat the same type of situations in the classroom. So you're not seeing this stuff on the sports teams. I mean, they do enforce discipline in the athletic fields, and they're very serious about it because they understand that it is a privilege to play. You can lose your spot. You will not be welcome back if you can't behave properly. And what do we see? We see kids behaving properly. We see them going out and volunteering their time. We see them taking pride and being better students because of their participation. And what do we see in the classroom for kids that aren't participating? And Chris Trickett brought this up, and he's absolutely 100% correct. You get a better caliber of student when they're involved in activities. It's not just about the classroom, and he is not wrong. There's plenty of studies that show that. But you will always have a percentage of students that don't care about that. They're not going to join the band. They don't want to do a sport. And there are going to be kids in the classroom that are going to be disruptive, and they are going to ruin the learning environment for kids that do care. And I think that's where we're not seeing the same type of behavior. Teachers don't have the same abilities as coaches.
No, they're not empowered.
They're not empowered the same way. The football coach wants to beat a kid on the helmet with a broom. Everybody makes an excuse for him. But if a teacher even raises his or her voice a little bit, they have to have a phone call with the parents apologizing. And it's a very different world between the two. And I would love to see a statement from the board and the administration, lockstep, arm in arm, saying if you're enforcing an existing policy, we will support you, period.
Yeah.
We will back you up, and you have the full unwavering support of your administrative team and your board, period. That doesn't mean you get to abuse kids in the classroom, but if you're enforcing policies, and if there's a problem with the policy, we'll take it to the board and we'll have to get it changed. But we've given you the tools, and we've made it clear they're not following their own policies. We have bullying is through the roof right now. We're seeing reports of it daily, from all levels, and it's not being dealt with. Teachers are afraid to get involved because they're not really sure what they can do. We have an anti-bullying policy, but they're afraid to enforce the policies that have been written by the board. It's lip service. That is not. You cannot run an organization like that, like telling the public one thing but telling your staff something else.
Listen, I mean, it gets down so bad that, like, if a teacher can't even enforce a dress code policy, if that, which is very black and white, okay, there's very little left to interpretation on the dress code policy. If that is a challenge, that the teachers aren't even empowered enough to follow the dress code policy, that they're going to have backlash if they send a kid down to the office for dress code. That how can we expect them to be able to implement the other discipline policy? And
I don't blame the teachers one bit.
No, me either.
I don't think they're wrong at all. I'd probably feel exactly the same way. And I feel like they're killing hope. Like the teachers are just withering. It's tough to watch. And we're still lucky to have the best teachers I think I've ever seen in a public school.
I agree. It
won't stay that way if we don't support them.
It's not bad teachers. It's not supporting the teachers, the great teachers that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, going to multiple, meet the teacher nights. I mean, you can see it right there. They have, the teachers are doing a great job. They have great setups in their classrooms. They're on point. It's amazing seeing the materials they have. So, I do feel for them when they have to deal with issues.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, some of the issues are pretty extreme from some of the conversations, we've had with community members where, desks are getting flipped on a daily basis and, kids are being kind of told, well, just kind of block.
Well, and teachers block, duck, and run.
Yeah.
They're teaching that at the elementary schools.
They're like, that's not okay.
Common enough that you got to know how to deal with somebody flipping a desk or swinging. Teachers getting hit.
Yeah. Bit. Scratched.
Yeah. Bleeding.
Yeah.
It's not good. And it's not everywhere. I don't want to paint this horrible picture like it's an insanity in there, but I mean, we gotta give the teachers the tools to deal with this stuff. I mean, it's really what it comes down to. The only other thing on discipline I wanted to bring up is, and this is only because I was talking to a lot of educators in my family, and I had talked to our administration, and I had asked, well, how do we handle expulsion? And I said, if something gets bad, if we have a bad actor in the school that we can't get them on board, they're just constantly a problem, whatever, bullying, drugs, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And he essentially told me that expelling students is almost impossible because they just come back, because Pennsylvania has a rule where you must educate and nobody will take them. For anybody that's heard that, from what I've been told, that's simply not true. There's a school up in the Poconos. What they're doing is they're doing mandatory virtual, where if you can't behave in the classroom, You must go virtual. They just enroll you in virtual academy. You're not welcome back in the buildings. There's another school, and this is out of state, but still interesting idea, where to incentivize the teachers, they're paying them to do private tutoring, and they're just they're like, you're out. Learn from home. We'll give you the resources, and a teacher will come to your house twice a week or whatever after school's over, and we pay them as a bonus so they can make some extra money. And he said the teachers actually really like that because they get some one-on-one time with the student. Maybe they get to work with an individual student, and they get to make some extra cash. So there are solutions out there. I don't know if either one of them are good or bad or correct or wrong. I don't know. But this idea that there's nothing we can do, throwing our hands up and just walking away from the problem, is very frustrating to me, because it didn't take me long talking to other school districts to find that there are a lot of school districts out there, and they're all doing things a little bit differently. And, it's not that hard to find solutions.
Well, I mean, Wilson has the virtual academy already. They also have the night school program. So maybe it's, if a child is behaving inappropriately over a period of time, and it gets to the point where expulsion is an option, maybe it is mandatory virtual academy, and they can work their way to the night school program. And if they can behave in the night school program,
Work their way back into the classroom.
Work their way back into the classroom. But we can't just ignore it. We can't just let other kids fall behind in their classwork, and teachers being distracted and kids being distracted. It's just not fair to the rest of the people in the school.
I think the argument we get a lot is you got to be compassionate for these kids. And I'm like, but where's the compassion for the kids that are being affected by these kids?
Yeah.
So everybody gets victimized when these things happen. There's no winners. Nobody's thrilled that there's a kid that's having behavioral issues, but how do we minimize the damage to everyone? And I think that's part of the equation that has to be, it can't all be about one person. And if you let kids make it about just themselves, they'll never stop.
Well, isn't the most compassionate thing for that child, truly,
Is to show some repercussions for their actions.
to teach them
Yep.
how to be better, right? Like to teach them how to discipline themselves. Isn't that really, truly showing the most compassion? Like discipline isn't supposed to be harmful. It's actually the most purest form of education.
Absolutely.
So if we're failing in discipline, we're failing to educate.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and to kind of add on to something you said earlier, Amy, I think it goes beyond even just teaching them what it's like in the real world as far as a job experience. But if you're not following the rules you set forth and allowing these kids over and over to go against those policies, then in my mind, they're going to learn that just like there are rules in school, there are laws that we live by in society, and they're going to think, well, I don't have to follow those either. And I just worry that that's going to set them down the wrong path.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to demonize students that have an issue. Right?
No.
I think there's all the empathy in the world for, somebody is coming from a different situation than somebody else, and to kind of frame it like that. But I think ultimately we can all agree that if we can have all of the students get to kind of their journey at the end of their senior year, right, get them across the finish line in the best shape possible for the next stage of their life. And if that involves some of these solutions that we talked to get somebody back on track, I think ultimately there's all consensus there, right? We want every student to succeed in the end. And some of the paths might be a little different than others. But ultimately, yeah, I think there has to be some set of rule in the classroom, and we got to support the teachers.
And success can look a lot of different ways, but we've got to agree on at least the outline. We've all got to agree on the bare minimum.
Well,
So-
what do you learn when you have 2 young kids, right? So if you take your kids with you to the grocery store and they throw a fit, and because they want this toy or this piece of candy or whatever, and you give in to that, every time you go to the grocery store, they're going to repeat that behavior, right? It's learned. So if we have these policies and we're not following them, and we're essentially rewarding kids for bad behavior, we're teaching them and every other child in that school that it's okay. It starts with little kids, in that kind of a situation at the elementary school level, and it continues. And I do think at some point, in high school, you give a little bit more leeway because, kids have to learn to make mistakes. They need to make mistakes in order to grow. But you only learn from them if there's consequences.
Yeah.
If we eliminate all the consequences, you eliminate all the opportunity for growth.
Well, and the way the stories that don't get told are, my niece left high school early, and she went to Wilson, and she took graduation after her junior year and decided not to do her senior year. And we were talking to her, and I said, why did you leave? And I just kind of assumed she was a smart kid. I thought maybe she was just wanted to get to college. She was bored, and she said, I didn't like the way I was treated. And, red flags went up. And I was like, all right, what was going on? Like, tell me what's going on. And she said, all right, well, there was a kid in my class, and I forget which class it was, doesn't matter, never did his homework. For almost the entire year, showed up, never had it done, never had anything done, never studied for a test, just kind of did nothing and no effort. And one week he did his homework, and the next week he got to sit at the teacher's desk and eat lunch that she bought at McDonald's for him as a reward. And she goes, I never missed a homework assignment, and I never got lower than an A in that class, and I never got McDonald's at the teacher's desk. And this really scarred her, but she never said a word. She never said anything. She just silently took it and just wanted to leave because she felt like she was being victimized because of the behavior of the classroom. I don't think the teacher realized that's the way it was being perceived. I think they were just trying to help this one kid. But sometimes if we spend, we've got to be aware of our actions. It works in a lot of different ways, and we can leave people behind by focusing too much on, and that was all positive reinforcement. There was never a negative connotation. There was never, in her mind, she could have easily been like, well, I don't need to do my homework either then. And what's the point?
Well, you want to talk about teacher burnout. Okay, now kids can retake tests and so teachers have to prepare the first test and now a retake test, and they're grading the first test and the second test, and they're doing work in between with kids. I mean, again, there's no accountability on the kids' part.
Yeah.
There's no
personal accountability.
Right. There's no personal. We're not teaching personal account. They're like, I don't feel like studying. I can just blow this one off and I can do the retake.
Yeah, I can see it going both ways. I can also see it ultimately, if they eventually learn the material and demonstrate knowledge, there's benefit there. But I agree with you. You should study up front, right? Do it the right way.
Right.
But ultimately, if there's going to be good mechanisms to support. But back to Craig's example, people can debate whether that was right or wrong. But I think what's lost in that is not validating how your niece felt, right? Regardless of whether the teacher, it doesn't matter. How did this student interpret that? What was her experience? And we need to keep that in mind. All these other students in the classroom, what is their experience?
Yep.
Validate that. I agree. I think that's an important point.
Well, and I think we're moving away from. I think there has to be a little bit of carrot and stick. It can't be all stick. You're generating a bunch of insane people, and it can't be all carrot because that's the type of thing that my niece saw. Like, it was only positive reinforcement. Only when you actually did something did anything good ever happen. But I had who was it? Casper, Guadalupe Casper told me when we were at an equity meeting that she would never support me in enforcing discipline at Wilson if it was in any way punitive. And I think there's a mentality out there that it must always be positive. And I don't agree with that. I think you learn from the combination of the two. That dichotomy of experiences gives you a different, this feels good, this feels not good, maybe I should do more of this. And I'm not saying we're caning kids, but that's the reason why things like stay after and help clean up the room as a punishment, or you started a food fight, you got to mop up your own food and work with the janitorial staff, or you've trashed the bathroom and you've got to work and clean up. That's not fun. And alternatively, if you do good, you can get McDonald's at the teacher's desk. That's not a bad reward as long as it's handed out with some sort of consistency. But you've got to have that difference. Otherwise, they don't know. They don't understand the difference between the two. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But anything else on this?
I don't think so.
Nah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap another one up. So thank you guys for joining us. And we're going to be back next episode. We'll be talking about supporting our female students. So stick around for that one. It's going to be a great one. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys.